Tom.
Should be live
Good
now.
afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of the Planning Committee. Just to advise visitors to this meeting, we will follow the agenda as published. When we come to the decisions on planning applications, report of the Director of Place, I will outline in more detail the process we will follow at that point. But members will generally have their cameras and microphones switched off unless it is they wish to speak. And members will indicate to me the chat box if they wish to speak or ask a question. Item 1 on the agenda is declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? Councillor Sanders, please. Councillor Sanders.
Thank you, Chair. Just to confirm that I will not be taking part in committee during application 0883/20, which is the application for St Peter's Vicarage, Farnworth in the Kersley ward. The neighbouring property of the application is the home of my councillor ward colleague, whom I consider a very close friend. So I think it's only right that I leave the virtual meeting and return to once I'm told to come back to the meeting for the following application. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Sanders. No other declaration of interest? Thank you. Item 2, urgent business. Nothing has been brought to my attention.
None received,
And therefore, thank you. Item 3, apologies for absence.
Yes, Chair. Thank you. We've got apologies today from Councillor Ayub, but Councillor Iqbal is here in his place, and also from Councillor Wilkinson, but Councillor Newall is here in his place.
Thank you very much indeed. Item 4, the minutes of the previous meeting.
Move, Chair.
These have been circulated.
Move them, Chair.
No dissent. Those minutes are approved. Can I, at this point, as we come to the planning applications, explain that my name is John Walsh. I'm chairman of this committee. We have in support this afternoon planning officers whom I will call as appropriate. Nicola Arabia from the council's legal section, Susan Bailey and Ian Mulholland from the legal section taking the minutes and the administration of the meeting. Each application will be taken in order as on the agenda. I will invite officers to present each item and then invite speakers who are not members of the planning committee. I will call first of all a ward councillor if there's been indication of one wishing to speak, and they will be allowed to speak for 5 minutes. I will then invite an objector, if one is recorded, to speak for 3 minutes and to take any questions that members of the committee may have. I will then invite the supporter to speak for 3 minutes and again invite any questions from the committee. I will invite committee members then to ask any questions of officers before I open the debate. The debate will then take place and we will vote on each item at the conclusion of that individual discussion. First application this afternoon, therefore, is application 8215, which is land at the junction of Dean Road, Chamberlain Street, Salisbury Street, back Deanchurch Lane. Let's go on. Who's presenting this one? Is it Mr. Mansell who's presenting this?
It's Mrs. Turton.
Mrs. Turton, sorry. Mrs. Turton, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this application site fronts Dean Road and is currently accommodated by stakes on a plane and a car park to the rear of the site. The proposal is for a 5-storey building of contemporary design. The ground floor will be in commercial use. either 1 or 2 units with a separate bin store to the rear and 3 parking spaces. The upper floors will be in residential use. Apartments all meet the National Space Standards. No car parking spaces are proposed, and no amenity space other than for the top floor unit. A secure cycle store and bin store are to be provided. 7 letters of objection have been received from local residents, hence the need for the application to be presented to committee for decision. The recommendation to members is approval, subject to conditions. Members' attention is drawn to the late list, which provides details of the delivery statement and also some minor amendments to the recommended conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mrs. Turton. I have no speakers listed for this application. The matter is therefore open for debate. Councillor Morgan.
Thank you, Chair. This obviously most of us will be very familiar with this site because of the plane and all that publicity attracted when that was put on it. This site is really it's on one of the major arterial routes coming into Bolton. It's obviously opposite near the UTC. Parking in this area, apart from the bays that you can see in front of the shot, is absolutely horrendous. We've got double yellow lines opposite. Those shops there where the old Labour Club used to be, and generally people completely ignore all the traffic restrictions in that area and just park on those double yellow lines. I think this will these 13 flats and then another retail unit will only exacerbate the problem, and just shortly past there you've got the traffic lights on College Way, etc. So I'm really surprised that we haven't requested well, there isn't any space for parking anyway. This site that's going on, that gets full of cars generally, and I think it's completely. I'm a bit shocked that our highways people have nodded it through without any sort of plan, without any parking. Most of the housing around this area is all traditional terraced housing, and we already got a massive problem with parking. So I just think it will completely add to the problem we have, and it's generally in the evenings, etc., and in the first thing in the morning. So as the fact that there's no parking provision, etc., I will move refusal.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. Councillor Sherrington.
Thank you, Chair. My question relates to what's on page 11 of our information, and all it is to do with is to do with the bins. It says on there that from the officers, it says that there's adequate provision. I'd just like to know what adequate provision is. You know, is there enough? I mean, we're talking here. I mean, it's 13 flats, but quite a few are double. You know, so we're talking in the 20s of people who will be actually living within these flats. And so I do have my concerns that if we don't have enough bin space, that the rubbish could be all over the place. So I was just wondering, is there adequate provision for recycling, and is that adequate that they talk about relating to the grey bin being enough and sufficient for these 20 or so people to put their rubbish away? And like I say, there's no indication really of what the breakdown is on this. It just says that it's adequate, and I'm so sorry, I don't know what adequate in this particular situation is. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Mrs. Turton, do you want to comment on that, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so when the application was first submitted, there was actually only one bin store proposed. So I consulted with the council's refuse section, and they said that was inadequate. And they informed me what the requirement was for the number of apartments and for the retail units. This was relayed back to the applicant, and the plans were amended to incorporate 2 bin stores within the development proposal, one dedicated for the retail units and one for the apartments, and they've confirmed that they're of the correct size to accommodate the number of bins required for recycling and for general waste. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thanks for that information.
Councillor Dean, please.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I think if you look at the general area as a whole, I think the wider area is a success story for our town. If you look at the way the university and the other education establishments, including the school opposite, have developed, are really a success story. And that area is one of the most successful regenerating areas we've had in the last few years, and I quite like the design of the building. I think it fits in with its surroundings. I think parking is definitely an issue in the area. However, there is a block further up, even closer to the traffic lights, that has retail shops. I think there's a sweet shop, a barber's, and a dessert place there. They seem to be running quite successfully with limited parking. You know, people, that particular building and this particular proposal are too close to the traffic light for people to park anyway. You know, people won't do that. It is a commercial area, there's no doubt about that. It's a developing commercial area. There are issues of, I think we all know, including the local councillors there, of antisocial behaviour, of littering, even, you know, drug issues with drugs in the area. But I do feel that having a building there rather than a car park would get rid of some of those issues. So there'll be less antisocial behaviour, less littering. We just need to make sure that the businesses are responsible for that, the ones that are going to trade from there. I think there's a good food offer in the area. If you look opposite, a bit further up, there's the old Labour Club, which was turned into a number of shops, I think 4, 5 or 6 units, and each of them do provide a good quality food offer. And I think this is an area that's up and coming when it relates to you know, retail and commerce. I think most of the people that are going to use the area are going to be students, including the flats. I'm pretty sure that the 13 flats, most of them, if not all of them, are going to be rented out by university students, which is absolutely ideal. It's every student's dream to be able to jump out of bed, cross the road, and then, you know, end up in the classroom at university. So and the flats, I think, like I said, do fit in with the area. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually support the officers on this occasion and support approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Dean. Councillor Newall, please.
Thank you, Chair. It was just a couple of observations. Paragraph 28, it's discussing the height of the proposed building. And the comment is made that the previous building that was on this site was also a tall building. It was a Victorian building, and that imposed itself on the surrounding area. But the fact is that Victorian building was there before the newer buildings was built, so there was no choice but for those new buildings to accommodate that tall building. There is a choice now. There's a choice whether or not to build a building so high and impose over the other buildings. The other point I'd like to make is paragraph 40, when we're talking about amenity space. There's no amenity space at all on this, which I find quite disturbing. But the point is made that it's not always possible to achieve amenity space, which, you know, I suppose is a fair comment. But then it goes on to say, amenity space is more desirable in some locations than others, which I think's quite a staggering thing to say, actually. And looking at this area, and I don't know this area very well, but I would think in this area, amenity space would be something that was very, very desirable. I do think you do need amenity space there. It's just not good enough to say that you can walk to Queen's Park. So there's a couple of things that jump out at me that I'm not happy with this application, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Newall. And Councillor Darvesh.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm actually going to go with the officer's recommendation on this, and the reason for recommending approval might sound a bit feeble, but you know how sometimes we see planning applications where councillors say, I'm going with the ward councillors in terms of what they're actually saying. Here, the ward councillors have not actually made any comments, which makes me think a substantial application like this, I mean, it is a tall building in a prominent location, must not have any concerns. So it might sound a bit feeble, this, but I'll support the application. But I just want to make a few comments. In terms of the ground floor and the commercial uses, A1, A2, A3, I think highways do not be able to differentiate between the car usage from an A1 use and an A3 use. I think they should have really highlighted that in terms of the transport statement, because A3 use obviously more likely to have more cars parking up in the vicinity. It's just a comment. The other thing in terms of what Councillor Newell just mentioned, which is amenity space, we had an application, Bolton Town Centre, where what they actually did, the amenity space was, well, what they actually had were flats which were below the national standard. So they increased them up to the national standard, which almost compensated for the fact that there was no amenity space. So in this application, it actually up to the national standards in terms of size, which almost implies that if you're up to the national standards size, then you don't need amenity space, almost implies that. I'm glad to see the condition about the extraction equipment. Sometimes applicants are asked to put a lot of time, effort and expenditure in terms of the type of scheme before the application is actually approved. So it's always good to see that as a condition. The only thing that I think needs amending is the hours of delivery. I wouldn't like to be living on top of a commercial use whereby deliveries could still arrive at 11 o'clock in the evening on a Sunday as well. So I think that just needs looking at. I think if that was reduced, the hours of delivery every single day, I think, then I think the application would be acceptable. So something like 7 o'clock in the morning till, say, 8 o'clock in the evening, 7 days a week. I think then it has less impact on the residential uses nearby, especially the apartments on top. So I'm happy to support this application, just with that condition. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Howard.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to support the application. The first thing that came to mind is that we have heard testimony about the busyness of vehicles and parking and so on and so forth. But my feeling on that is that that should surely have hindered the agreement to have a commercial, if you like, a trade, a business on there, an unusual sited business on that piece of land, which was agreed not that long ago. So, you know, with that being the history that car parking was taken away for that, then surely that in a sense supports this application in that, you know, you can take away some land and then the best advice on parking and managing traffic and so on kicks in. So it's because of that history not too long ago of taking some parking space away that I would support this, and I'll support it for a number of the reasons that were put forward by Councillor Dean, who talked about the modern aspects of the area and the way it's being redeveloped, the way that it's changed, and the way that new buildings entering there is not a bad thing at all. amenity space has been raised. So I'm going to say that I'm actually somebody who, in my life, I've lived in a number of flats. I've lived in social properties. I've certainly, looking back, I've lived in properties where I've not had amenity space, and it's not crossed my mind too much at the time. So I'm actually more open-minded when it comes to amenity space. I did notice that there was a reference to a park when it was being suggested where people who might take, live in a flat might want to go to, and it was Queen's Park. And actually, I thought, well, I know this area quite well, and I've sat in the university gardens that are not actually too far from there. There's something described with the sign as a garden just off Dean Road where, so, there's a piece of land. So as I said, if I lived there, and I think that's what I'm saying to you, which I think does matter, that I actually, would live still. I live in flats. This sort of offer makes a lot of sense to me. I can really get my head around these applications. The other thing, of course, is that there's two side roads, isn't there? There's Dean Road, then there's Salisbury Street, and there's Chamberlain Street. Again, councillors will know this area well. And on Chamberlain Street, there have been some flats there. I think some of them are addressed as Mare Street. It's funny how the addresses work there. But those flats are there. They may well be occupied by students. Again, councillors have spoken about the people that will look to want to live in this area, with it being so close to colleges and universities. And I've not been aware of particular problems of people living in flats in that area at the present time. So so that's something positive I would say as well. There are a couple of things that stand out that I'm not so sure about, which is that I don't know whether one of the officers would say anything on these matters to me. So I don't know whether timber is a good material to have. I mean, there's timber garage doors. I don't know, but that's what the applicant wants, and nobody has come here to ask for or suggest a change on that. But the thing that I really don't know about is I've looked at all the diagrams, and of course it's commercial and cafe that's going in on the ground floor. So what is the situation then with close of business? Because there's nothing telling me about anything to do with noisy shutters. There is that condition that mentions noise, but there's another condition on plant and machinery. So would something like the prevention of noisy shutters, because this is a business, let me remember, the business is actually Councillor Darvesh has suggested, has he not? He talked to this condition, I think, on, I'm sorry, I can't remember what number that condition is, on hours for business. Anyway, I'll speak to them as they are at the moment. I don't know whether you're going to vary that, you see, till 11 o'clock at night. So that's the end of business, but then are there going to be shutters? Is there going to be a noise issue around closing up any premises? Because I don't know, that might be an issue. And if you're going to look at that condition anyway, then I'd be grateful if the officer, it might be that it's being built in such a modern way that shutters aren't going to be part of this. I'm not sure. I would just caution against the business of noisy shutters, because I myself have been familiar with them, and they can make a huge difference when you live above commercial property. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Is there any reference to shutters or enclosure?
Thank you, Chair. So the application doesn't refer to roller shutters at all, and I would think with the design of the building we wouldn't want them to be inserting roller shutters onto the external facade of the building. I think that would severely impact on the kind of design and character and appearance that they're trying to achieve. So it might be that they would put some kind of internal shutter, which wouldn't have the same noise implications as a noisy external shutter. But if they were to want to put shutters on the outside, they would have to apply for permission. And with regard to the hours of delivery, pollution control were consulted on hours of delivery and hours of operation. I think to further restrict the hours of delivery wouldn't be a problem. I think that if councillors felt that the proposed hours were too long and would cause disturbance to future residents and existing residents, and these could be shortened, that wouldn't be a problem. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Chair. Some of my issues have already been raised, but I again have problems with the parking in the nearby streets, not just for people using the shops, but also, well, students or whoever is using the flats as well, because obviously they want somewhere to park, and also the lack of space in the cycle store. It looks very small for the amount of bicycles. And I know the officers were happy with the colour of the bricks that's being proposed for this new building, but I would have liked it to be seen in a red brick to match the rest of the buildings there. And I'm not sure if it was Councillor Andrew Morgan that proposed refusal, but if it was, I would be happy to second it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Can I just clarify, Chairman? Refusal, Councillor Morgan proposed and Councillor Wright seconded.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Mystery.
I'll be very brief. This is a perfect opportunity for us to sort that corner out on the bottom end of Dean Road. The application is been judged fairly well by our officers. This is the perfect opportunity for us to bring that particular spot in line with the rest of the buildings within the area. It's going to propose some problems, but any other building that's going to go will have the similar problems. The design and the structure, the way it's been laid out, I think it's a very good application. We've looked into, problems of delivery, all the associated issues relating to parking. But then again, this particular spot's been busy with that plane there, and there's been a bus before there. Antisocial behaviour. I think there is an opportunity here to get rid of all that. May propose some new problems, but I can't see it being worse than what it is now, and so I'll be supporting the application. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. I have no more members wishing to speak. Mr. Allen, Alex Allen, you wish to speak?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's just to kind of, if members in a vote do go with a refusal of planning permission, I think members just need to be clear on what grounds they would recommend refusal, and also be mindful of the fact that in terms of the council's constitution and the good practice guide, that obviously if officers are saying within the report that we can't substantiate a refusal, then obviously the members potentially that moved and seconded the application would potentially have to defend the council's decision on appeal. So in terms of the reasons that I have listened to, obviously highways is the first, seems to be the key one really, and I suppose is that highway safety. It's a question I would put out to members. Yeah, whether it would have an unacceptable impact on highway safety, I suppose by virtue of the scale and mix of uses. I suppose whether there's enough evidence to substantiate lack of amenity space and I suppose the proposal being out of character with the area. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Councillor Morgan, you moved refusal. Do you want to comment on that, please?
Yeah, my main reason is impact on highway safety, lack of parking, and obviously a secondary, as Councillor Newell suggested, was the impact, lack of amenity space.
Thank you. Councillor Hornby, please.
Thank you, Chairman. It's just in relation to what our planning officer, Alex Allen, has just said. I just feel as though we're being bullied into going down a certain way. Surely, is it not officers' role to actually defend the decision that we as elected members make, or has that now changed?
That has no change, Councillor Hornby. I attended a planning hearing on Tuesday on behalf of the committee to support a refusal of an application in Water's meetings. And we've had examples, I think Councillor Peel has previously had to speak at a planning hearing, having proposed refusal. Members are now required, if they wish to propose a refusal against officer advice, to put forward the substantive reasons for that refusal. Councillor Darvesh has raised the issue of the change in delivery times. I think that was a material point. Mr. Allen, I'm sure that can be taken into account. Councillor Hayes has a question, please.
Yes, Chair, it was about that last point. I think if we're including it, if it's approved, I don't need to ask the question. It was whether it would be included.
Thank you. Councillor Peel.
Thanks, Chair. I didn't want to enter the debate. You responded to Councillor Harmby. I just wanted to put my £2 in on that. It's inconceivable that you can expect planning officers who make recommendations based upon the regulatory and policy framework to then go and say the complete opposite and appeal. They would be absolutely ridiculed and torn to bits by the professional barristers. So what Mr. Allen said is absolutely correct. They cannot be expected to flip on the professional decision. I'm supporting the application anyway.
Thank you. I have no further speakers noted. The only proposal I have is, which has been moved and seconded, is one of refusal on the grounds discussed, and therefore we will take the vote. Members are therefore going to vote for refusal or against refusal. Avoid doubt, for refusal or against refusal. Mr. Mulholland.
Yes, Chairman, it's the only. Yeah, we've had no mover or seconder for approval, so we've got a proposer and seconder for refusal at the moment.
Sorry, Chair, I didn't move approval. Councillor Dean here.
Yes, I agree with that. Councillor Dean did. Yes.
Yeah, but it wasn't seconded.
I'll second that, Councillor Walsh.
Councillor Mystery has seconded it. Okay.
Right. In that case, Councillor Mystery, we didn't have a note of your seconding, but we'll accept it. So therefore, I will take the amendment, and that is to approve. Members are therefore going to vote for approval or against approval.
Okay. So the amendment is proposed by Councillor Dean, seconded by Councillor Mystery for approval. For, against, abstain. Councillor Connor.
Abstain.
Councillor Darvesh.
For approval.
Councillor Dean.
For.
Councillor Howarth.
For.
Councillor Hayes.
For approval.
Councillor Hornby.
Against.
Councillor Iqbal.
For.
Councillor Mystery.
For.
Councillor Morgan.
Again.
Councillor Newall.
Against.
Councillor Peel.
For.
Councillor Radcliffe.
Against.
Councillor Sanders.
For.
Councillor Sherrington.
For.
Councillor Walsh.
Against.
There's no Councillor Waters here. Councillor Wright.
Against.
Six. That's 9 for and 6 against. So the amendment of approval is granted, and that becomes a substantive motion, and we need to vote again for approval.
Chair, that's with the restricted delivery hours.
Yes, Councillor Hayes. That's my understanding. Members happy therefore that we are now voting to make the decision a substantive, and it is for approval or against approval with the restricted delivery hours.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Mulholland.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Connor.
Against.
Councillor Darvesh.
For approval.
Councillor Dean.
For.
Councillor Howarth.
For.
Councillor Hayes.
For.
Councillor Hornby.
Against.
Councillor Iqbal.
For.
Councillor Mystery.
For.
Councillor Peel. Sorry, Councillor Morgan.
Against.
Councillor Newall.
Against.
Councillor Peel.
For.
Councillor Radcliffe. Councillor Radcliffe.
Against.
Councillor Sanders.
For.
Councillor Sherrington.
For.
Councillor Walsh.
Against.
Councillor Wright.
Against.
Okay, that's carried, Chairman. That's approved.
Thank you. That decision, that application is approved. Thank you very much indeed. We come then to application 8414 relating to 3 Winslow Avenue. And Mrs. Bailey, we need at this stage please to bring in Councillor Wild, the object to Sheila Ray, and the supporter Mr. Crashtor.
Yes, Chair. I think Councillor Wild's already present at the meeting. Do you want me to ring Sheila?
Can we bring in, please? Can you ring Mrs. Ray and Mr. Crashtor, please?
Yes, thank you.
Apologies, Chair. Which slideshow is it next? You're just on mute, Councillor Walsh.
The Wilmslow Road on show.
8414 3 Winslow Avenue.
Thank you.
Mr. Allen, who's presenting this one, please?
It's myself, Councillor.
Right, thank you.
Chair, all speakers have been invited now.
Are they with us?
Can
I just check?
Councillor Wild.
Councillor Wild, you are with us?
I'm with you.
Thank you. Mrs. Ray?
Sheila
Mrs. Ray
Ray
is waiting in the lobby. Yeah.
is here. Shall I let her in, Chairman?
Yes, and the applicant, Mr. Crashtor?
He's not.
He's just ringing in at the moment.
Oh, he's just here
Right.
now, I think. I'll just check. No, he's not here yet.
Oh, sorry. So you're talking to me?
No, Sheila, it's fine. We're just waiting for the applicant.
Oh, right. Okay.
Thank you.
Just waiting for him to dial in. As soon as he does, oh, here we go.
That's him. Yes.
And I'll let him in.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right. Is that being admitted now? Right,
Hello.
he's in the meeting, Chair.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Can I just check therefore for the record that Councillor Wild, you are with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Mrs. Ray
Yes, I'm here.
and Mr. Creshnall.
Yes, I am here, sir.
Thank you. Can I just explain for the benefit of the objector and the supporter, the process is that Mr. Allen will present the officer's report. I will then invite Councillor Wild to speak for a maximum of 5 minutes. Mrs. Ray, you will then, as an objector, have the opportunity to speak for 3 minutes and take questions from members of the committee. After which I invite the supporter, Mr. Creshnall, to speak for 3 minutes and take any questions that might arise. And could I remind members, if you have a question, if you could enter that detail, not the full question, but that you wish to ask the question, into the chat box, please. So, Mr. Allen, please.
Thank you, Chair. The application is for a 2-storey side and rear extension and also includes a single-storey front extension to form an open porch, a porch, enclosed porch, and a single-storey extension to the rear to form an open porch. As members will be able to see from the representation section on pages 29 and 30, the original submitted proposal was the subject of a relatively large number of objections. The applicant has been in detailed discussions with the plan officer to achieve a scheme which is considered to be both in character with the existing house and the wider area. In addition, due to the changes to the design and the extent of the proposed extensions, it is considered that the proposal would not have a detrimental impact on the living conditions of adjoining neighbours. As a result of further neighbour consultation, a further number of objections have been received, with a majority of these issues raising issues that have been addressed through the change in design. These are summarised on page 30 and 31 of the officer's report. Members will note that Councillor Wild has requested that the application be considered by members. Finally, I would draw members' attention to the supplementary information list, which clarifies a number of points, namely issues of land ownership, and also into just clarification that amended letters were sent out by our support team, notifying residents of the changes to the plans. As outlined in the report, the proposal is recommended for approval subject to conditions. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Allen. Councillor Wild, please, you have 5 minutes to address committee.
Thank you, Chair. Members of the committee, the original planning application submitted has been amended following concerns by officers and the number of objectors who had responded to the unsuitability in various parts of the plans. A total of 11 objectors had lodged their reasons for opposing the original plans. The applicants, as a result, substantially altered the plans and resubmitted a new set. There are, however, still a number of contentious areas. The resident who lives at number 5 Wilmslow Avenue, which is the adjoining semi-detached house to number 3, which is the applicant's residence. This residence is obviously the most affected by the proposed alterations. The objections were in connection with the 2-storey rear extension, the raising of the roof, removal of the chimney, and a new rear open porch. The two-storey extension and the raising of the roof will impact on access to light, especially as the sitting room of number 5 is located at the rear of the building. The rear porch will also impact on the access to light. The proposed height is 3.20 metres to the ridge, and the length and height will also contribute to it being intrusive. Also on the plans submitted, the dividing fence at the rear, this is a bit complicated now, but anyway, the plans submitted, the dividing fence at the rear is shown to end at the front left-hand corner of the side wall of the garage, when in fact, in reality, it finishes at the right-hand corner of the side wall of the garage. In other words, where the fence finishes now is obviously where the fence should continue to finish. This actually shows the fence is resited more on the side of number 5, resulting in parts of the fence now encroaching into the garden of number 5, which in turn means the fence is now visible from the sitting room at the rear of number 5, and the residence has forfeited an amount of land. Currently, there is a dispute between the residents at number 3 and number 5 over boundary lines. Now, I do know and I do realise that boundary lines are a matter, are a civil matter and not a planning issue. But surely, if the plans are being disputed, a decision should be deferred until the matter has been resolved. Returning to the other objectors, this planning application has received a number of objections from around the area. Some are listed in the papers which you've received with adjoining comments, as Mr. Allen has pointed out, from the planning officer. I will just read a selection of these just to illustrate the varied types of objections that have been sent in. The proposal would not be in keeping with the aesthetics of the other 7 detached houses on the avenue and nearby area. The proposal will impact on any potential saleability of surrounding properties. The rear porch with wooden pillars will make the adjoining property feel closed in. The 2 metre and 1.5 metre heights of the fences being proposed on the street boundaries to both Wilmslow Avenue and Chelford Avenue. They object to the height of these, given the other houses on both avenues have walls and fences that are either ½ metre or 1 metre, which is normal for a front garden. Wilmslow Avenue is a delightful area to live in, full of character, and with only 12 houses situated on Wilmslow Avenue, makes it a very private and residential area. In conclusion, can I respectfully request that as a result of the dispute between the residents at number 3 Wilmslow Avenue, who is the applicant, and the residents at number 5 Wilmslow Avenue, the objector, that the application should be deferred until a satisfactory conclusion is achieved. If deferment can't happen, conditions be agreed on the height of the 2-storey extension at the rear of the building. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wild. Can I invite now the objector, Mrs. Ray, please? Mrs. Ray, you have 3 minutes to address the committee, and as I said earlier, to take any questions members may have for clarification. Thank you, Mrs. Ray.
Thank you. My objections relate to the 2-storey rear extension, the raising of the roof, removal of the chimney, and the rear open porch. Under the policy CG4 of the core strategy and SPD house extensions, no extension should impact on the neighbour's right to light. The 2-storey rear extension and the proposed raising of the roof would impact on light getting to the rear of my property. Given that my sitting room is at the rear and faces north, my afternoon and evening light comes from the west. Therefore, light entering my sitting room will be reduced. Now, if it was a single-storey extension of the same depth, it would be less intrusive, not impact on the party wall, or damage my adjoined working chimneys or affect my light. The above same arguments under the policy also apply, but even more so to the proposed rear porch. The proposed maximum height is 3.20 metres to the ridge. This will reduce light significantly to my property. It will also be extremely intrusive given its length and height. If the porch is to be no more than a weather shelter, why can't it be similar in depth as his proposed front porch, but have a flat roof of no more than 220 high? There is an ongoing dispute over boundaries between our properties. I've emailed relevant councillors a copy of an independent surveyor's report, which is based on overlying his findings onto the land registry records, which shows where the true boundaries lie. It clearly shows the boundaries a straight line through the properties, running along my rear extension to the rear of my garage, whereas Mr. Koshnor's submitted plans are based solely on an ordnance survey map. Two surveyors have informed me that such maps should never be used to determine boundary lines, and a qualified architect tells me ordnance survey maps should not be used as a basis for architectural drawings because of their high level of inaccuracy. He said the plans submitted by Mr. Koshnor are a good example of why such maps should not be used. Councillors also have photos of the view taken from my rear sitting room, showing the front and rear corners of my garage. The 20-year-old current fence runs from the corner edge of my extension to the rear corner of the garage, reflecting the surveyor's findings. However, the photos also show that by using Mr. Koshnor's incorrect drawings, it implies the proposed 2-metre porch and the rear 2-metre high fence would cross my garden to the front of my garage and clearly impinge on the 45-degree line of my main sitting room window, and therefore would contravene policy CG4 as it would be an infringement on my privacy. Although I acknowledge boundaries are a civil matter, I request that any decision regarding this application, based on the use of incorrect ordnance survey map, be held in abeyance until the boundary dispute is legally resolved. Thank you.
Thanks, Ray. That was exactly your 3 minutes. Thank you very much.
I know, I've worked it out.
Are there any questions from members, please? Thank you. And no members' questions. Can I invite, therefore, the supporter, Mr. Koshnor, to address the meeting for 3 minutes, please, and then any questions members may have. Thank you, Mr. Koshnor.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, esteemed councillors and officers, for giving me this opportunity to address the committee and support to my proposal planning application. Further to the planning officer's report and comments to the objections, I would like to confirm that I totally agree with his report and is clear and precise in every point. As the report is good enough, there is no much left for me to add on too much. However, I would like to give a bit clarifications regarding some objections, which I believe most of them are from the adjoining neighbor. And some points it became too personal, and just to delay my application for no planning reasons. I understand that my initial planning application design before the amendments was a bit ambitious, but following the recommendations from the planning office, I have changed the initial design significantly just to avoid delays and referring it to the planning committee because we are heading towards winter. On 4th of September, I was told that my planning application was ready to be accepted and expected the decision by 7th of September. Unfortunately, because of continuous and baseless objections, which was something new and no planning matters, I was told that my planning application was stopped because of boundary which were thought to be incorrect. The main objector states that they have the land survey report. To my knowledge, as I am qualified architecture technologist and also I have a foundation degree in construction and surveying, to my knowledge, the land survey is inaccurate. The objections become so intense that involve internal chimney breasts and trees in my garden. Here, I would like to confirm that there are no trees to be removed for the purpose of the development. All the building works will be carried out by a competent person and will comply with current building regulations. In terms of the height of the fencing, it's crucial for the safety for my young children, as the office has clarified in his comments, it would be below the eye level. Therefore, I would be very grateful if you would kindly approve my application, and I will abide the conditions set out in the report. I would be very grateful if you would kindly accept my application, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cashmore. Have members any questions? Thank you. I then open the matter up for the debate. Councillor Darvesh, you have a question for officers first, please.
Thank you, Chair. That last picture, is it possible to put that last picture back up there, please? Because I've just got a quick question for Alex about the rear elevation.
Yeah, just a second, Councillor.
Mr. Darvesh, that's the picture you wanted to see.
All right, is it? I can't see it. Anyway, I can see a picture of yourself. I can't see that picture. What I was trying to say, Alex, was in terms of the rear elevation, how it's next to the next door neighbour, and the neighbour is concerned about the 45-degree rule. How far does it actually come out?
The two-storey.
I can't actually see that picture, by the way.
I can see it, Councillor, but I'm not sure.
I can see it. Can other members see the picture?
Yeah, I can see it, John.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we see it.
I can see it now.
Right.
So,
Okay, thank you.
So if just to explain what's happening at the rear then, Councillor, so if you can look at the photo and try to find the picture, but basically the two-storey element at the rear will come out 1.8 metres, so that's broadly in line with the existing single-storey extension at number 5 at the adjoining property. Then the single-storey open porch, canopy, call it what you will come out a further 2 metres. Obviously, a pillar on either side, dual pitch roof. So the objective is correct. I think it's a maximum of 3.2 metres at the highest points, which is set because it's dual pitch. It's obviously set away from the boundary, the shared boundary. Yeah, so it comes out a further 2 metres. So roughly speaking, it comes 2 metres away from the neighbour's rear extension. And the officer's assessment and in the report state that it doesn't come out it's behind the 45-degree angle as measured from the centre of the neighbouring window. So therefore complies with policy.
Okay, thank you, Alex.
And it also, it's north facing, as the objector also says. Obviously, in terms of sunlight, the existing house will, in a large part, to some degree, shade that window anyway.
Thank you very much. Matter is open for debate. Really, we're dealing with the planning issues this afternoon and not with the boundary issue. That is not within our purview as a planning committee. In terms of the compliance, Mr. Allen has just explained that the rear extension does still comply with the 45-degree rule as applied from the centre point to the window, and I can see no planning grounds on which we can legitimately refuse this application. I'd like the members to speak. Councillor Darvesh.
Yes, Chair. I'm happy to second this application. It's a large enough plot. Most of the development actually is actually on the other side, as far away from the neighbour as possible. So it doesn't actually have that much of an impact. And so most of the development actually utilises the space on that side as well. So there's no planning reasons to refuse this application. So I'm happy to support it.
Thank you.
Sorry, Chairman, who proposed it? For the record, please.
For the record, I said from the chair I couldn't find any grounds to refuse it, which means I proposed it.
Propose it. Thank you.
Any other speakers? That being the case, we will come to the vote. Mr. Mulholland, can we take the vote, please?
Yes, just
for approval or against approval?
yeah, we've just had proposed for approval from Councillor Walsh, seconded by Councillor Darvesh. No other proposer or seconder. For, against, abstain. Councillor Connor.
For.
Councillor Darvesh.
For.
Councillor Dean.
For.
Councillor Howarth.
For.
Councillor Hayes.
For.
Councillor Hornby.
For.
Councillor Iqbal.
For.
Councillor Mystery.
For.
Councillor Morgan.
Against.
Councillor Newall.
Against.
Councillor Peel.
For.
Councillor Radcliffe.
For.
Councillor Sanders.
For.
Councillor Sherrington.
For.
Councillor Walsh.
For.
And Councillor Wright.
For.
That should be everyone. That's carried for approval, Chairman.
Thank you. That application is approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We come then to application 8883, St. Peter's Vicarage, Bradford Street, Farnworth. And again, we need to bring in a number of speakers. Councillors Pattison, Cunningham and Heslop. An objector, Mr. Flitcroft, and a supporter, Leanne Danielle. So there'll be a short pause whilst we get the speakers.
I'll just invite them in now, Chair.
Hi Chair, I'm actually here. I lost the connection, but I've just rejoined.
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham. We'll call you shortly.
Chair, both the speakers have been invited and are currently trying to join the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll just look out for them now.
Councillor Pattison, Councillor Heslop, are you with us?
Yes, Councillor Walsh, I'm here.
I'm here with you as well, Councillor Walsh.
Thank you very much.
Susan, I've got two numbers here. One's 3303 and one's 431. I'll let them both in if you
Yeah,
can
neither
clarify
of
who they
those are
are.
the numbers. Neither of
They're
those
not,
are the
are
numbers
they?
that are wrong, but yeah, they've both said they're due to join, so they must be using different numbers.
I'll let them in and perhaps the chair can just clarify.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
They're both in the meeting now.
Thank you very much indeed. Can I therefore do a roll call on this one because we have 5 speakers? Councillor Pattison?
Thank you,
You're still with
Chair.
us? Right.
Yes, I'm
Councillor
here.
Cunningham, you're still with us? Councillor Cunningham?
Chair, yes, bad connection. We keep popping in and out.
Right. Councillor Heslop?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you, Chair.
Can I check that we've got the objector, Mr. Peter Flitcroft?
Yes, here, Chair.
Thank you. And the supporter, Leanne Danielle?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. For the benefit of the visitors to the meeting this afternoon, can I just explain the process for this application, as with all others, is that I'll invite officers to present the report. I will then invite ward councillors in the order that I've just recited to speak for a maximum of 5 minutes. I will then invite Mr. Flitcroft as the objector to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes and to take any questions and clarification from members of the committee. I will then invite the supporter, Leanne Danielle, to speak again for 3 minutes and to take any questions from members of the committee. Mr. Allen, who is presenting this one, please?
It's my my colleague, Mrs. Dubacker.
Right, thank you. Thank you very much indeed. You've got 4, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. This application refers to a detached property at Bradford Street in Farnworth. The application sought benefits from planning permission for change of use from a dwelling to an office, which was granted in 2018. Whilst the planning permission was implemented and change of use has taken place, due to COVID-19 and people working remotely, the offices have been closed. The current planning application applies for change of use from the office back to its residential use. This will, however, operate as supported living accommodation, which is different from case assisted living. What this means in practice is that 6 teenagers living there don't require individual care and support, and they will live and they will be able to live there because they are ready to live independently and have the ability to go to school and work by themselves, and will have keys to come and go from the property as they like. The agent clarified that there will always be at least one member of staff working at the premises on 24/7 rota. However, none of them will occupy the premises on permanent basis. It is noted that a high number of objections have been received, mainly raising concerns over antisocial behaviour. Whilst antisocial behaviour is not a material planning consideration, the applicant, CFS, clarified that they have a number of supported living properties in Manchester, one in Bolton on Bury Road, when they've never had any problems with any of the occupiers. In addition, they've been confirmed by Children's Services to be a reputable organisation that should be capable of managing the residents in a professional manner. The application is recommended for approval by officers, and the applicant will be happy with 2 years temporary consent. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Can I now invite ward councillors, please? Councillor Patterson. Councillor Patterson, you've got 5 minutes to address the committee.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. Can I say that I have grave concerns with this application and agree with all the points made by the residents and councillors what are involved in this application. It really worries me that planning considerations are cold and fixed without taking into consideration the wider implications of the community. Youth behaviour can and often does carry an ongoing detrimental burden for the police, youth services, social services, local communities. The true cost is huge and often ongoing. It is vital that we get it right for these young people who unfortunately have had a disadvantage in life, and who we pair them with is also important and matters a lot. Like other areas, we also suffer with antisocial behaviour, which is not being dealt with, and that is down to government cuts, lack of capacity. This area as well for me is a concern because it is very easily connected to other areas. Kersley, Newbury, Walkden, Littleton. They're all known for drug runs and criminal activity. CSS Kerr say call the local police. The police that are not carrying out on calls as it is, again due to lack of capacity and cuts on their behalf. CSS Kerr also mentioned educational work in a time and area where there is no employment or resources, again due to cuts from central government. The Safeguarding Children, Adult and Analyst framework aims to reduce the risk of re-abuse or future harm through successful intervention. I'm sorry, but this will not be a success. They're coming to an area where there is very limited or non-existent intervention. It will be a failure for the young people and also the wider community. They cannot trust safeguarding. They cannot even guarantee safeguarding. The measures are, again, to call the police. Therefore, possibly criminalising these young people before they even get a start on future life. In my mind, that goes against CG4, compatible uses, safety and security. And it also goes against point S1 of Bolton's core strategy document, the need to reduce crime and fear when looking at developments. This area is predominantly elderly. 57 residents have come forward to raise strong concerns. I really hope this committee takes these points on board and objects to this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pattison. Councillor Cunningham, you have 5 minutes also to address committee.
Thank you, Chair. Can you still hear me? I better check before I start.
We can indeed.
Good. Okay, thank you, Chair. It'd probably be an understatement to say that this application has generated strong emotional response from some of the residents living in close proximity to the site. However, having considered the written objections from the residents and the views expressed in a Zoom meeting between residents and the applicants, I have a slightly different view on this. Whilst understanding that people are naturally wary of change, I'm yet to be persuaded that the concerns expressed regarding this application would actually come to pass. Fears expressed by residents of it bringing crime to the neighbourhood, whilst perfectly understandable, appear to contradict the letters of objection received, which state that this actually exists and paints an image of almost living in the Wild West in some cases. Although this itself has been contradicted by other residents who say they've lived there for years and don't recognise the picture portrayed of this area in some of the letters of objection. Prior to the submission of the application, CFS wrote to the neighbouring occupiers to provide them with details of the proposal. They also held a community consultation event on Thursday, the 2nd of July, which was via a Zoom meeting, and I think there was approximately 8 to 10 residents spoke at that meeting. From the recording of the Zoom meeting that I listened to, the applicants seem to have conducted themselves in a professional and reasonable manner, trying to genuinely answer questions and concerns of residents, but they were met with great opposition nonetheless. There does seem to be a possible misunderstanding of what is being proposed with residents regarding this home as something for unruly teenagers, and the applicant's explanation that this is in fact a supported living facility to help selected young people between the ages of 16 and 18 learn the skills they need to live independently and progress in life. The 6 teenagers who would live in the residence all would have to sign up a contract of conduct, which is quite rigorously, if we're led to believe, quite rigorously enforced in order that they can move into this facility. It has 24-hour supervision by a member of staff on site. They have to be in employment or further education. They have limited strict visiting days and times 3 times a week between the hours of 4 PM and 10 PM. Any visitors have to be vetted by the police and local authority, and visitors are only allowed in communal areas, so they can't go up to the rooms, and have to be out of the premises by 10 PM. The young people, if they don't stick to the agreements that they've signed up to, can be removed off this facility and they lose the opportunities they've actually signed up for. So it's not in their interest really to actually try to, flout any of this. In conjunction with the fears of crime expressed by the residents, a lot of the comments have been made as to the possible dangers to the children in the nearby school, along with disturbance and upset and fear being caused to elderly occupants of the old people's bungalows in the surrounding streets. However, there doesn't appear to be any actual evidence to support these views, and it suggests that the views are based on fear and assumption and conjecture. Notably, there have been no objections by either the school or the police to this application. It does seem that the residents living closest to the site have sort of, they've been whipped up into a real frenzy of fear over this, and this has been expressed in meetings that have been held at the home of one of our, well, the objector, Peter Flitcroft, who's going to speak after, and obviously his councillor wife. They live just across from the site, and as is their right, it's been made very clear they don't want this on their doorstep, and will fight tooth and nail to try and stop this application succeeding. They've successfully obviously enlisted the help of two of their own former councillor, who will speak, or have and will speak on this application as well. There are those who suggest that the meetings were held inappropriately due to the COVID lockdown and in breach of the guidance issued on social distancing, as people were too close together and not wearing masks. But the desire to stop this application has actually gripped part of that community and takes precedence, perhaps over any other consideration. And I'm left wondering, what is the answer? What is the balance on this? And it's perhaps in order to provide the necessary safety net for residents, as this was originally an application for a temporary change of use. I know it doesn't say that on the application now, but the temporary change of use, which this would enable concerned residents to see that the conditions and the applicants the applicants that are willing to accept these conditions and adhere to them, it would make sure that they could actually witness that these were being adhered to. I hope that the committee might agree that a temporary change of use, which is what it started out as, might be a more appropriate way to ensure that the fears of residents can be addressed and provide the all-important exit strategy.
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham.
Hello.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham. You've had your 5 minutes. Thank you. Councillor Heslop, please.
Thank you, Chair. Many residents of Bradford Street feel let down by previous planning decisions, especially tirers in this area. And for the application now before you, residents feel that they need to express the opinions during the decision-making event in the hope of impressing on officers, councillors their own concerns. The company. CFS as growth, as in recent years, has been quite simply exponential, and it is far from clear that the growth is generic based on gaps in service, doing things differently, or indeed speculative. We are, of course, seeing many private companies making profits on the back of social care, housing benefit, and it is not clear just exactly how this company appears to be growing. The evidence presented in the company's accounts and at the residents' meeting simply did not stack up. Average 16 employees across 7 centres providing round-the-clock care. Each employee would need to work 85 hours per week, and that does not take into consideration sick leave. Indeed, the Children's Commissioner for England told the BBC on the 9th of September 2020 that this type of scheme, and I quote, allows for a high profit making without checks and balances that are seen in other care settings. Having attended the company's online meeting with residents, it was evident that people simply did not accept the probity of the company, especially when it came to this application, and many felt that it was part of a calculated process through a succession of planning applications, all aimed at achieving its ultimate goal, or in other words, results by stealth. Residents also refused to accept that the change of use was due to COVID-19. Any reduction in the need for office space due to working from home is completely offset by the rapid expansion of the company that would still need offices for administration and training. Unregulated care homes. The proposed change of use would result in supported accommodation or semi-independent homes for young people and would be unregulated. It is probably instructive to look at the very recent developments in this field of care, and I would draw members to the Child Commissioner for England, Anne Longfield, comments again on the BBC on the 9th of September this year, in which she states that these unregulated homes should be banned. I would also draw members to point 33 of the officer's report, which states that the Council's Children's Services department stated that the development is quite large in comparison to other facilities in the community, and due to the nature of the care provided by CFS may cause difficulty. Of course, it is important to remember that our young people who have left care are given the very best opportunities, and semi-independent living is an important stepping stone in the road to settled adulthood and into the move into mainstream accommodation. However, this application appears to be on a scale that may have the opposite effect, and rather than achieving successful outcomes, may have a hugely detrimental impact on the future chances of the young people. The location. Despite my request to Children's Services for substantial data in respect of children in care in Falmouth, I received an email advising that there are not significantly more looked after children from Bolton placed in Falmouth area, which appears to reinforce a suggestion from residents that Falmouth is already accommodating its fair share of some of the challenges associated with looked after children. Bradford Street is less than 200 yards from the Salford boundary, with Little Alton and Wharton being adjoining towns. Newbury starts where Bradford Street ends. Whilst I very much welcome the initiatives by GMP to reduce violence and criminality in Falmouth, it is noted that Newbury was one of 6 areas within Greater Manchester, the others including Central Manchester and Salford, that are taking part in this initiative. There are already huge concerns amongst residents about young people from other areas coming to Bradford Street, and I will quote just one of the many messages sent to me just in the last 4 weeks and this is a resident who said, "There are scores of teenagers getting drunk and smoking wacky-backy," and this is on the main field, which is about 20 yards from the entrance of the proposed application. I would dearly love amenities to come back to Falmouth in the form of the college and youth facilities such as Bolton Lads Clubs and Girls Club, or even a satellite centre as enjoyed in other parts of the borough. However, I am not convinced that the amenities as indicated at point 26 of the report actually exist, unless of these kids, these young people, like Crown Bolton. Finally, it is my firm belief that this application fails to comply with CG4 of the core strategy.
You've had your 5 minutes.
Okay, and one sentence, and particularly strategic vision of the council by helping to ensure that these needs of the whole of the community, inclusive of age, are met, and if allowed to proceed, would not provide the very best opportunities for these young people that are leaving care. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. We now have an objector, Peter Flitcroft. Mr. Flitcroft, you have 3 minutes, please, to address the meeting and then take any questions from members. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm speaking on behalf of the vast majority of objectors to this. Residents object to this application in the strongest possible terms. We do not trust CFS Care. They have lied to residents, not fully told the truth on their planning application, and ignored conditions issued with their last planning approval. They previously stated to residents that the building would remain an office facility operating under office hours and would never be used for facilities such as are being proposed. Residents will not be fooled again. CFS Care are a commercial organisation who are using COVID-19 as a commercial opportunity with regard to this property, without any cognizance of the impact on the local community. Rooms will be filled to provide the best commercial returns. This does nothing to allay the fears for the safety and security of residents. Contrary to their planning statement, the office is not vacant. It has been used regularly over the past 10 weeks. During the Zoom consultation on the 2nd of July, no safeguarding measures for residents were put forward by CFS apart from contacting police. Residents were unimpressed with the attitude of CFS management and their lack of empathy with issues raised, and this is clearly demonstrated in the volume of objections. 57 objections were submitted, showing the depth of concern that residents have with this proposal, a key concern being whether this is a safe and suitable location for 24/7 supported living. The immediate area is residential and includes St Peter's School, 81 purpose-built properties for over 55-year-olds, and at least 22 other properties with residents aged 55 plus. Nearly 90% of the local properties house people over the age of 55, and all of them are fearful of this application. They are frightened that there will be a substantial increase in youth activity in the area, which is already blighted by antisocial behaviour and drug use. Referencing Bolton Council's strategy points CG4 and S1, this proposal is not compatible with the surrounding occupiers. It will generate additional nuisance and create a negative impact on the privacy, safety and security of residents. At residents' meetings, safety and security...
Mr. Flitcroft, one final sentence, please. You've had your 3 minutes. One final sentence, please.
CFS Kerr referred to the Bradford Street as solvent and prosperous. While there is a strong neighbourhood community, solvent and prosperous are not the words that reflect the levels of this crime. Drug use and antisocial behaviour is rife. Recent weeks have seen a drugs raid and a drugs-related case within 30 metres and a knife-related incident with use on the park.
Thank you, Mr. Flitcroft. Thank you. Members, any questions, please? Thank you, Mr. Flitcroft. Can I invite Leanne Danielle, please, to speak to the support of the application?
Thank you, Chair.
Hi, I'd just like to start by thanking you for the opportunity to present in person. CFS Care is a growing and innovative provider of foster care services and supported accommodation. We are passionate about enabling young people to have the best start in life, and by providing the right support, this will enable a young person to transition to live independently and be successful. CFS Care is proud to share that we recently completed the Placements North West sales tender, for which Bolton is the host local authority, and we hope to support local authorities with their lack of capacity across the North West. During these unprecedented times of COVID, there is an increased need in home working arrangements, and at the same time, sadly, the current climate has seen a higher number of young people entering and then leaving the care system. This has meant that there's now more need than ever before to support these young people. Therefore, with the vacant premises and the urgent need for increased facilities, we feel it is important to provide the vital services for care leavers. All of our staff engaged in a robust training programme to be able to support our young people appropriately. We are structured in a way that provides a living support worker and additionally offers support from the management team, comprising of a team lead per service, a locality manager, service manager, referral manager and me as the director. Support is provided within working hours and on an out of hours working rota system. Our service model is for up to 6 young people to live in the property with 1 member of staff on site 24/7. A second member of staff is on call 24/7, and a third member of staff provides extra day support through the week to enable completion of certain tasks and appointments. These young people require support and not care, and they have a choice. They agree to sign a document to say that they will engage with our services. We have a robust matching process to ensure.
I'm sorry, we've lost your link there.
We have developed an outstanding pathway independence framework that is AQA accredited and evidences progress and achievement. We have 6 properties across the North West, and one of these services is in Bolton. There have been no complaints from the community. We have 85% of all of our young people that are engaged in education, employment or apprenticeship, and we've managed to successfully provide positive transition pathways to independence for 100% of our planned leavers, all demonstrating the success of this model. We've applied for temporary change of use in response to COVID, which has led to greater need for accommodation. When the COVID situation is under more control, it may be that we need to reduce our supported accommodation and revert back to office space. The proposed change of use would support the strategic vision of the council as set out in the current local plan. Is also a policy compliant proposal, and the proposal is also in line with the general objectives of the National Planning Policy Framework.
Time up.
Premises,
Thank you.
deliver high quality supported
Thank you.
accommodation.
One sentence, please.
Therefore, respectfully request that you grant our scheme temporary planning permission.
Thank you.
Sorry for this.
Thank you very much.
I've got a really poor connection. I'm really sorry.
It's all right. Don't worry. I think we've got the substantive part of your presentation. I've got a number of questions, please. If you could just hold on the line, please. So, Councillor Peel, first of all.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask the applicant? This is obviously a change of use application, so unusually we're not talking about buildings and structures and that type of thing. We're talking about usage only. So I think it would be quite helpful, considering some of the comments we've already heard before yourself, if you gave us some kind of indication of the journey that your young clients take. I know people would have quite different experiences, but what is the typical life journey of the young people in your care, and what is the experience that they have in your care, and moving on from that into adulthood? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll explain that. So most of our young people are either being in foster care, or they're coming from a home environment where they need support, or they're coming from a residential children's home. I just want to make a point that we are not an unregulated care home. We do not provide care. We're not a children's home. We are a supported accommodation service for care leavers, and we fully support working to a regulated standard, although that we're unregulated, and very much in support of becoming regulated in the future. Our Placements Northwest submission to Bolton approved our level of quality, and what happens is a young person will be referred via Placements Northwest that's appropriate for leaving the care system, that's ready to be supported into independent living. They come to us and we look to see where they may match against one of our services, see what we can do to meet that young person's individual needs foremost, and then we look to see if they match alongside another young person and can live in harmony with other young people in the house. We then set about looking at a personal individualised independence to pathway plan for that particular young person. So what skill sets do they need? What do they need to learn to become independent? We engage them, re-engage them, or engage them in education, or perhaps more recently with a couple of our young people who actually live in Bolton, we've managed to secure apprenticeships for them young people. Those young people will continue to live with us, and we will work through their pathway plan and deliver the accredited scheme of AQA. And when we can evidence that they are ready and have developed the skill set to be able to move on, we then transition them on into post-18 services. We're currently working with a housing association. We're putting together a service level agreement where we can work with them to actually plan a transition pathway for young people that are turning 18, ready to live on their own, but they'll be supported by the housing association as they move on into adulthood. That is the majority of our young person's journey. I think it's really important to talk about the fact that the young persons engage in our services. So the difference between care and support is that the young people have the autonomy to choose a supported accommodation living service and whether they want to engage with that service. And what's key for us as a provider is that the engagement is there. If we evidence that a young person is remotely not engaging with our service, we would report back to the referring local authority to suggest that perhaps this young person's not quite ready for this service and needs to revert back to a care setting or a higher level of needs support service.
Thank you very much. Councillor Newell, please, question.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. I'd like to ask the applicant, I've looked at the plans of the building, and the bedroom's very large, and you have 3 large attic rooms. Do you have any plans to increase capacity of this home? Because I do think it is, I agree with, I think it's Children's Services that have made the comment. It does seem quite a large building for 6 residents. So have you got any plans to increase capacity here?
Absolutely not. The building is a large building. It's absolutely suitable for the age category of the young people we've got. So in terms of if it was a children's home, it would be a very large building for young children, but we're talking 16 to 18-year-olds, young adults. So space is of the essence really for those young people. We wouldn't intend to increase capacity of the number of young people living in the building. That's not what we would do. If we were going to use any of the external or the internal space in the future, that would be for development of activities for young people. We've got no plans to convert the loft spaces that you refer to. That's not in our plans. Our plan at the moment was literally, we were using it as offices, and it's just become redundant because of the current situation, and who knows how long that's going to be. And we work closely with the commissioners in Bolton, and there is an increased level of need across Bolton's commissioners and other close local authorities for supported living accommodation. What we said was we would look to support them while this need was there. As and when COVID reduces, hopefully, and we're able to get back to a normal working life, then the need for officers may return. We just wanted to be able to utilise the space that we've got for the young people who need our support.
Thank you.
Very much. Councillor Shanking, can I be clear? You want to speak in the debate rather than ask a question? Is that right?
I want to do both.
Right.
I want to speak to the applicants, and I also want to speak in the debate. Okay.
We'll take your question first, then, please. Question.
It's not in the debate. I want to actually speak to the applicant. Okay.
It's a question, and then I will call you later.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. I hope that's not been very confusing for you, Miss Applicant, but there we go. All it is, I just want to ask, you mentioned about the fact that you'd had 100% success rate, and I just wondered if you could actually give me some indications of how many young people that actually means. Does it, I presume you're meaning that have actually left the care situation and have gone out into the world and have been successful. So I was just wondering if you could give me some idea on the actual figure. Thank you.
Absolutely. We only established in 2018, so we're only 2 years old. So the number of care leavers have not been massive. However, over the last 12 months, we've had a higher intake of young people accessing our new developed services. And in this last 12 months, 8 young people that have left our services have managed to transition positively out of our services. Whether that be that we've positively transitioned them to a different service that is more appropriate to their needs, or whether we've managed to transition them into independence and in a less supported manner. 8 is the number that we're looking at the moment, and I've got 3 potentially leaving in the next month or 2, and then another one in December, all leaving very positively, engaged in college or apprenticeship. And we are working with the Housing Association for a positive move on for their own tenancies.
Can I just ask as well, do you have links with backup at all?
No, I do have them on one of my contacts, but not directly at this moment, no.
Okay, right, thank you.
I've got a final question then from Councillor Darvish. Councillor Darvish.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering, you mentioned that there's no plans to increase the number of people living in the accommodation beyond 6.
That's good back to planning.
Sorry?
Sorry.
Okay, so isn't it the case that if you go over 6, then you've got to tick additional boxes into the building regs, safety issues, so it's actually probably costs you a lot more to go more than 6. Is that probably a fair assumption?
No, for us, that's not particularly something that's in our thought processes. It just is our model that for communal living properties, which are classed as our tier 1 services, where they provide 24-hour support 7 days a week and no more than 6, just because our robust matching processes wouldn't want to match any further than that in that particular type of service. If it were more of a flat-based model and you had, say, a number of apartments, you may be able to support more young people together. But really, the number is down to the appropriate matching, and we successfully match 5 or 6 people, depending on the size of the house.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Daniel. We come then to the debate. I've got Councillor Sherrington, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say that in my ward, we do actually have a number of places for people with difficulties. And also one of them actually relates to young people of this age and how we support them. We have no problem with any of these places, and I don't see why that would be the case here either. I supported Backup when I was mayor. They were one of my charities who do a similar sort of thing to this and do an excellent job in actually turning youngsters around and getting them so that they understand how to pay bills and so on and everything before they're actually out there in the real world. And it makes a huge difference to them and stops them from finishing up being yet another person who is on the streets and homeless. And I do think that there is a need for this, and I do think that these people who actually work in these services do an excellent job. What I would like to say as well is that if the neighbours were so worried about this sort of property being used for lots of people in it, they could have actually just gone for change of use and made it back to a house. And then they could have actually had 6 people in there of all sorts. And they wouldn't have had to come for planning for that. They could have just done it. And they could have had a house in multiple occupation. And there wouldn't be anything that they would have had to come to planning for. Because unless it's over 6, you don't need to come here. So I do find it really, really unbelievable that they can't be supported, because these people, these youngsters will actually have support in there from people who are going to help to look after them. Not saying they're caring for them, but they'll make sure that they're doing what they should be doing. That wouldn't happen if they had a house in multiple occupation. So they want to think about how bad it could be rather than actually, and start thinking a bit more positive about what they're trying to do with these young people and actually getting them back into the community, getting them into the community with a proper roadmap of what they're going to do with the rest of their lives, which I think is admirable. So I will be putting my support to this, and I will be moving approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Charrington. Councillor Howard.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much, Chair. I've got about 7 matters which are related to material matters I need to raise, and then just one comment because we've had a number of contributions, so thank you very much. The first thing I want to say is the residential area. I'm not sure it really meets the designation of quiet residential area. Only because there is a sizable primary school, and that's near the vicarage. That's St Peter's primary school, and that's a crossover on Alexandra Street. So I'm want to judge this application very fairly indeed. The vicarage, the building, is a dwelling within its own site. It's got, and we've seen on the diagrams that it's got a distinct boundary with a garden area, and that is off the footway, affords it some privacy. Then the change of use, of course, from office to residential, and that is moving from a trade permission, that's what that was, the office use, a trade permission, to residential. And that in itself is known, is it not, to free up parking availability when you do something like that. And I do accept that residents in the area, of course, for themselves and for their visitors, in this area, parking is a premium. So I did feel that actually that would be one thing of note. Again, the office use did have some opening restrictions. Again, I've thought about that, and that was, of course, a planning permission that and the company mentioned this because they've had the office use permission. That was B1 for trade, and I thought about that, and I've come to understand that certainly in planning terms, that's surely about the size of the building, of course. I mean, we know today, we've heard all the details about the 6 bedrooms and the living quarters and so on. It's sizable. So I now understand why there were some restrictions on office use, because it's such a big, it would be such a big offering for trade. Now the application, of course, is to return to residential. the next item I do want to just speak to is what we've heard about something in the papers, and I've looked at those words very carefully because we've got a statement from Children's Services that gives a view on the company, of course, that they're persuaded by the company, and of course Children's Services will do that in terms of offers from companies that are providing services for young people. And I look very carefully at the other matters, and I think the statement also in the bundle says, it may lead to potential areas of complaints from the local community. I read that carefully and I felt that the emphasis is very much on may, and the emphasis is very much on potential issues. And again, I've thought about many planning documents I've read, and actually I find that those paragraphs can be found in many different documents, just reminding really that there has to be good communication with the local area, and I found that type of paragraph in applications for student dwellings, HMOs, studio apartments, blocks of flats and so on. I find those types of paragraphs to be, if you like, catch-all paragraphs. I'm not highly persuaded by that paragraph at all on material matters. I'm not sure about the position. All I've heard today is that perhaps somebody has been seen inside this building, even though it's not really been occupied for offices for 8 or 9 months. And I thought, well, you know, I don't know what that really means, but somebody may have gone back there. I really don't know. But what had struck me when I thought about this from the bundle is that I find that residents start to feel anxious about buildings that are not occupied. Buildings that again maybe have their own setting, are a bit isolated, and I'm not sure. I mean, it feels like a material matter because it's about what's happening with the building, and I thought I'm going to consider that today. Actually, this is an application for a good use of a building. Another matter, of course, is use of the building, and it has been made clear today that there's going to be a contract for each person that lives there, and that they're going to be an educational work. The inhabitants are going to sign, if I can call them that, the young people. I'm trying not to call them tenants because I don't know whether that's the right term. They're going to sign what sounds like a living agreement, basically, with the CSF company. They're going to be required to sign. That feels like something where you seek to engender a responsible way of living in people who have possibly come from difficulties and have to have that bit more input to understand how to live responsibly. I'm fine with that. I will say then at the end of that comment on those that are going to occupy that part of material matters, the occupancy of the building, CSF company will need to up its game with community relations, with community dialogue on what its offer is in that building and in the area of Farnworth and Kersley, please. And then one extra comment I do need to make. I'm going to tell you that I'm seconding the proposal for approval of this application. I just want to say that it was mentioned that the Children's Commissioner has taken a position of being against unregulated care, and we've been told that this is an application that involves unregulated care. I won't say too much because it's not really a planning matter at all. I recognise that, Chairman, or possibly not a planning matter. But what I want to say is it's the role of the Principal Independent Advocate Children's Commissioner for England to state these views on rights and so on, and appropriateness from time to time. And I want to be fair and tell you that I've also read statements from Anne Longfield, the Children's Commissioner, on regulated care as well. And it's no surprise that from time to time the Children's Commissioner will give views that might be a bit difficult on both unregulated care but also from time to time on regulated care. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Howard. Councillor Newall.
Thank you, Chair. I'm a great believer in supported living. It provides a vital service for some of our most vulnerable residents of all ages this particular facility is aimed at our younger people. And I'm very glad to see that the late list and the applicant has offered some kind of clarity as to what supported living is, because I do think, judging by some of the comments I've heard today, that there is a confusion here of just what supported living is. It isn't a care home. It's not a care home, this, for juvenile delinquents or problem children. These are children who don't have the benefit of a family support. And what supported living does is it puts that support in place so that these children can transition into independent living. The facility that we already have in Bolton, the one on Bury Road, is actually in my ward. And I had heard of no problems with it, certainly no complaints to me. So I checked with my ward colleague, Councillor Warren, the other day, and she has no complaints from residents about that facility either. In fact, quite the opposite. As I say, these are vulnerable children. I do agree and I do understand that residents have concerns, and I totally understand the concerns of residents. It's fear of the unknown, it's fear of the other, and it's fear that this facility is going to be something that it quite clearly isn't. And I think I would like to offer reassurance as a ward councillor in a ward where a facility like this operates, reassurance that, as I say, that this isn't what I think they are being led to believe that it is going to be. Supported living is not a care home. It is exactly what it says. It is supported living. So I will support this application, and I would just like to add that if there are any residents watching or listening to this who have concerns, that this will be very closely monitored. There are people who work there that will make sure that this isn't a problem to residents. Children's Services will make sure that this isn't a problem for residents, and the welfare of all the residents, as well as the residents who will live in this facility, will be a major concern for all involved. So I'd like to offer that reassurance to residents. And like I say, Chair, I would like to offer my support to this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Newell. Councillor Peel.
Just waiting to go live. Yeah. There we go. Thank you. Councillor Newell used the word reassurance, and I think that is the key to this. There's been a lot of very good explanatory comments made, starting off with Councillor Cunningham, who was the only person, ward councillor, to correctly assess this situation. Quite frankly, the comments from Councillor Patterson and Heslop really did surprise me. I wasn't expecting those types of comments, so I was actually impressed with Councillor Cunningham. It just shows you're never too old to learn. I had a feeling it could have been the other way about, based on your perceptions of where people are or might not be, actually, after all, on the political spectrum. But I've been on planning committee for over 20 years without a break, and I've seen these types of applications before. I've seen crowds of hostile people at a location over in Bolton West, which I'll not mention, when I was vice chair of planning committee, where it made this this reaction seem like a picnic, and people getting completely the wrong end of the stick about vulnerable young people who are being offered a family home setting. And that particular location in West Orme went very quiet within a few months. There wasn't an issue at all, as we all knew at the time. It was about reassurance. And I think councillors, ward councillors, have such a vital role to play in communicating with their constituents, to allay their fears, to actually talk to them about their misconceptions, to challenge fake news, and rumours that tends to get out of control. Because as Councillor Sherrington said, we have it in Tonwood Hoffward multiple units or facilities, whatever you want to call them, not just for young people. We have facilities for older people. We have facilities for people who may be perceived by the community as being far more problematic. And all of these throughout our wards, and by the way, to Councillor Heslop, they do tend to be on the whole within the inner wards of Bolton. All of these facilities operate with no issues from the community, and that's how you run it, because we never ever, God forbid, we ever get back to a situation where you have these huge monolithic children's homes type settings where there's crowds of people in there like some kind of institution. We've not been doing that for decades now. Young people who have had unfortunate circumstances in their life are brought up in as close to a family unit setting as is possible. And that's why you have houses like this, or sometimes smaller houses, smaller numbers of people. They work best, because just because people, young people, have had unfortunate starts to life doesn't mean to say they're any less part of the community as anybody else. And for their future and for their future development, it's massively important that they're made to feel part of the community, that they're made to feel as though it's just like any other family house. That is so important for their future. I would say that these settings work best when there are smaller numbers, and so I definitely wouldn't like to see over 6, otherwise we end up getting back to that type of old-fashioned institution that we used to have in the past. So no more than 6. I'm reassured by the assurance from the applicant that there's no plans to extend. But finally, Councillor Cunningham doesn't need any convincing. But to Councillor Patterson and Councillor Heslop, please engage with I think this is going to go through. Please engage with the applicants. Please reassure your constituents and Mr. Flitcroft that what they think in the worst case scenario is going to be the case is not at all. And there are many examples around the borough that will show them that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Peel. It has been proposed and seconded. This application be approved. Mr. Mulholland, can we take the vote, please?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. It's been proposed by Councillor Sherrington, seconded by Councillor Howard for approval. No other amendments. 4 against, abstain. Councillor Connor.
4.
Councillor Darvesh.
4.
Councillor Dean.
4.
Councillor Howarth.
4.
Councillor Hayes.
4.
Councillor Hornby.
4.
Councillor Iqbal.
4.
Councillor Mistry.
4.
Councillor Morgan.
Decides to do.
4.
Councillor Newall.
4.
Councillor Peel.
4.
Councillor Radcliffe.
4.
Councillor Sanders declared an interest and is not currently in the meeting. Councillor Sherrington.
4.
Councillor Walsh.
4.
Councillor Wright.
4.
That's carried, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And ladies and gentlemen, we move then to the final planning application. Application 8991. Mr. Allen, who's presenting this, please?
Mrs. Turton. Councillor.
Right, thank you, Mrs. Turton.
Chairman, shall I just request Councillor Sanders to come back in? Ask him to
Oh, sorry,
rejoin.
yes, please. Yes, if
I've
you
just
would. Sorry about
requested
that.
him now. Sorry, I should have flagged it up before. I've just pressed the rejoin button. It's calling him now.
We'll await his arrival, please.
Councillor Sanders he's back in the meeting, Chairman.
I'm back, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Right, Mrs. Tutson, if you want to continue, please.
Jodie, I'm just looking for the PowerPoints. It's just closed itself down.
Okay.
Be 2 seconds. Sorry for the delay, there we go.
Okay, thank you, Chair. This is a council application for replacement wall railings and fencing at a local learning centre. No residents' objections have been received. Members' attention is drawn to the list of supplementary information which details that officers have secured weld mesh fencing to the Ethel Street frontage rather than palisade fencing as originally proposed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. I've got to say to colleagues that the Vice Chair and myself did ask officers to discuss that very point. We felt that palisade fencing was not appropriate in this particular use. So can I thank officers for that, for their efforts on that. Matter is open for debate.
Move it, Chair.
Thank you. Moved and seconded.
So that Councillor Peel, sorry, Chairman, second.
Councillor Peel seconded.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Holby, do you want to speak, or was that your substantive speech?
I was only going to move it or second it. It's straightforward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. It has been moved and seconded, and no speakers listed. Can we therefore take the vote, please, Mr. Mulholland?
Thank you, Chairman. It has been moved by Councillor Dean, seconded by Councillor Peel for approval. 4 against, abstain. Councillor Connor.
4.
Councillor Darbesh.
4.
Councillor Dean.
4.
Councillor Howarth.
4.
Councillor Hayes.
4.
Councillor Hornby.
4.
Councillor Iqbal.
4.
Councillor Mistry.
4.
Councillor Morgan.
4.
Councillor Newall.
4.
Councillor Peel.
4.
Councillor Radcliffe.
4.
Councillor Sanders.
4.
Councillor Sherrington.
4.
Councillor Walsh.
4.
Councillor Wright.
4.
That's carried, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. That application is approved. We come then to item 6 on the agenda, matter of record planning appeal decisions. Any comments on this application, or this item, sorry?
I would like
Thank
to.
you. Sorry, Councillor Peel.
Yeah, there was just one I wanted to comment on, which was the successful appeal. It was an officer delegated decision to refuse another fast food takeaway on a section of Tomo Road, and again our over proliferation policy was tested by the planning inspectorate, and the planning inspectorate ruled that our over proliferation policy is still sound, and I think the longer we have this policy in place and resist too many of the same types of takeaways concentrated in one area, the better it is for our general high street. So well done, officers.
Thank you, Councillor Peel. No other comments? Members have to note that report. Thank you very much indeed. We come then to a new item, which is item 7, the quarter performance figures. The development manager. Sim Manley, to present this one, please. Welcome to your first formal meeting of the Planning Committee, I think, at this point, I ought to say.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you for that. Yeah, what we've done is we've decided to try and keep members updated on the position relating to the numbers of applications coming forward, and we were looking at trying to do that on a more regular basis, and also in the future bringing things like enforcement numbers through to see just how we're performing in these difficult times. If members are having regard to the report that I put together, members will note that actually we've done extremely well in the circumstances. COVID has clearly had an impact upon the way everyone's operated, and over the last 6 months or so, officers' performance is extremely high in terms of where we are in meeting national performance standards. In terms of major applications, we're at 100%. We can't ask any more of our officers than that. And in terms of the non-major applications, and that's for clarification, that's all minor applications, householders and changes of use, we're also doing very well at 96.9%. Slight dip from the previous quarter. But what is important is to recognise that we've also seen a very strange glitch or blip in the market, in that there's been a significant increase in the numbers of applications which have been received. There's an increase of 27% over the previous quarter. So we're talking about the quarter that's just ended had 27% more than the 2 previous quarters, which has obviously had an impact upon officers. More applications coming in does have an overall impact upon how they deliver the service, and in response they've upped. There was an increase in performance in that same quarter by nearly 10%. So officers' performance is very, very good, and in terms of putting us in, to put that in context with other authorities across England, in terms of major performance, we're 56th in the country at the moment, and with 100%, that was the return figures up until the end of June. We were 56th with 100% performance for the last quarter. That will push us up through the rankings, and in terms of the non-major applications, we're actually 34, number 34. In the context of all authorities, there's 344 authorities nationally, so 34th in that is does go to show what a brilliant job the officers are actually doing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. I've got 3 members so far indicated wish to speak. Councillor Hayes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Sim. I think it's a very welcome report to get. One question and little niggle perhaps about the on-hand measurement. Now, presumably an on-hand application will be one that was validated yesterday. Equally, it may be one that was validated 3 years ago and not yet decided. It would be helpful, I think, if we could have some measurements of where we are in meeting times, because looking on the website, every application has got a validated date and a date where it should be decided. I've actually got 3 in my ward. I won't go through the details because it gets into too much detail, but one of them at the moment is 13 weeks overdue. It should have been decided on the 12th of July. Another one is 3 weeks overdue, and another one is 1 week overdue. There's another application which I'm interested in, which is nowhere near out of time yet, but it gets out of time on the 20th of October. Yet the site notice invites applications up, comments from the residents up to the 23rd of October, which is a bit of an anomaly, I think. But what I would say is the planners I found very professional. I think they're extremely hardworking, but I think there is obviously a backlog which is causing problems. I think we need to concentrate on that. The area which concerns me even more, and I'm glad you mentioned it, is enforcements, where in fact I think we have officers in some cases who have limited experience, who have been dealing with quite complex cases, and you and I discussed this about a week ago in one particular case, and you've taken some actions which I think are very positive, and I thank you for that. But I think we really do need to keep an eye on enforcement. There's an awful lot of them which are a long way behind. Anyway, thank you for the report. It is welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes. Councillor Hornby.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Sim, for the report. I do welcome this report. However, it doesn't reflect what we get in this casework as with regard to the number of planning applications which are overrunning. I think Councillor Hayes has got similar concerns with regard to that, and I know we've had discussions on that. The other concern I have, of course, is also the lack of planning committee meetings that we've had of recent times, and I just hope that we can get back to a more regular pattern with planning committee meetings. And again, picking up what Councillor Hayes has just said with regard to enforcement, there seems to be a lot of enforcement cases which are taking such a long time to deal with. Now, maybe it's because officers are working from home. I don't know. I just think we need to try and up the game a little bit with the enforcement side. But other than that, I do welcome the report and welcome to Bolton Council.
Thanks, Councillor Hornby. Councillor Sherrington, please.
Just looking for my red light. Oh yes, I'm there. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Sam. Thanks for your. All it is regarding enforcement. There's quite a few things that I could get in touch with them about in enforcement, but I've been holding back because I do realise that everybody who works within the town hall is overloaded on what they would normally be doing. And so I do hope that they bear that in mind. The reason being, I wouldn't like them to think that I've actually gone off the radar. I am still around, but I'm not really getting in touch with them with anything, because I do think that some of these things can wait a little while, because quite simply, I know life is so much different at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sherrington. Sim, before I bring you in, can I just assure Councillor Hornby that the Vice Chairman and I have made it clear that we are looking forward to receiving very shortly a forward list of planning applications to come to committee over the next period, and see that on a rolling programme, so that we will always have a robust agenda for future meetings. Sim, do you want to comment on those observations, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, obviously with the large numbers of applications coming in, we haven't had an increase in the numbers of officers, and we're looking at how that's going to be working through as to whether or not there's a sustained increase in the number of applications coming through. In the last 2 weeks, we haven't seen a dip in that, so it is a trend which is carrying on. We obviously need to see how we deal with that to ensure that we don't build up a big backlog of applications. Obviously, there are applications that do take longer to get through the system, and we do try and deal with those. But overall, the officers are dealing with a significant increase in the numbers of applications coming in, and that because they are the more junior officers are actually first responders in undertaking enforcement investigations. That is obviously having an impact, because the profile of the new application, or this increase in application, is primarily on the smaller scale applications to householders. So it is having an impact. We are looking at putting in a number of different steps to try and support the officers. We are actually in the process of Alex is organising a number of interviews to replace vacancies, and we are looking at other issue, other contingency measures, including focusing some of the enforcement officers to assist the planning officers in getting the investigations carried out as quickly as possible, in light of the surge of applications we've received. Yes, so in terms of the planning committees, we are looking very carefully at the next couple of committees ahead of in the future, with a view to actually targeting them. So if we do need additional planning committees so that not too long, then we will obviously seek to try and secure those to ensure that the planning committees are manageable and on a regular basis. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I have no further indications of speakers. So could I thank members, officers for their attendance this afternoon and declare the meeting closed. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Chair.